Today we have Marcus Gehrig, CEO of its South Australian division, to tell us about what happens behind the scenes and the planning underway to deal with the challenges which lie ahead. Would you please welcome Marcus?
Hello everybody, and thank you so much for having me here today. It's a real pleasure and honour to be speaking to you about the RSPCA and what we're doing and our future. As per this first slide here, I really wanted to share with you some different sides to the RSPCA. Often when I speak to people, they think that we're an animal shelter. We've got our facility down at Lonsdale and we deal with cats and dogs, but there is so much more to the organisation. I thought I'd give you a bit of an insight to some of the other aspects of what we deal with. Just a warning, I am going to show a video, a case study of one scenario, and anything to do with animals can pull on the heartstrings. So just fair warning prior to that video being shared with you. Just to share with you a bit of the breadth and the functions of what we do as an organisation. Rescue is a big part of what we do. We have, last calendar year, over 2,000 rescue calls that our volunteers and staff were deployed to. These range from a cat stuck in the tree to animals wrapped up in barbed wire fencing that we have to rescue and resolve. We had almost 4,500 cruelty reports. We have a national call centre out of Queensland, and we will respond to all of those cruelty reports every year. Through our Lonsdale facility, we did see and care for close to 9,500 animals, which is a huge number of animals that to see and to have our veterinarian team respond to, and our behaviour team. We educate children in schools and had almost 500 visits into schools. And then we have a legal team, and I'll discuss some of this shortly, that deals with prosecutions and prosecutes people that really do, that are very cruel people to animals in our society. We couldn't do what we do without our volunteers, so we have over 1,100 volunteers that turn up to Lonsdale and other shelters across the state and in our op shops every week. And then we have a big role to play in advocacy as well. More broadly though, although we deal with a lot of domestic animals, nationally we have the RSPCA approved farming scheme. And many of you would have heard on TV, Coles and Woolies promoting RSPCA approved chicken and other products. So we have a very close connection with the farming sector. We work in partnership, and part of the approved farming scheme is a demonstration of our connection with agriculture and that sector to improve welfare of animals even within the farming space. And it's a really important part of what we do. And broadly, last year the RSPCA approved farming scheme impacted over 650 million animals. A lot of them were meat chickens. We've had a big focus on that, but there's other standards that we're developing to expand our remit and work with the farming sector. But it's large and it's complex, and there's a lot of work to be done in that space. But getting into the crux of what I wanted to talk about today, one of the big functions that that is our role is to enforce the Animal Welfare Act. And we do that across Australia, and in South Australia it's a big part of our role. And commonly what we walk into are people that have just simply failed to look after their animals. They fail to give animals food, shelter, veterinarian treatment, and that can be quite distressing. But a lot of our role is to support people in the community. We think that animals form such an important part of the mental health of our society. I know with my children, I've got three kids and we've got a couple of dogs, and I can tell you that if they've had a bad day at school and they come home to our couple of dogs, it does change the world for them if they can cuddle an animal, and it has a huge impact to their mental health. And so for us, even when we walk into a situation that isn't positive, we can turn that into a positive through our role as an inspectorate and enforcing the Animal Welfare Act. But in some cases, even though we try to drive some improvement. Some people in society, unfortunately, their mental health is so far gone that we can't help and we have to intervene. And so we have powers from the Minister to seize animals, to enter property, to action search warrants, etc., gather evidence, and then prosecute those that have been cruel to animals and have breached the Animal Welfare Act. And that is a big role that we play. So one of the things I wanted to show you is a bit of a case study. This is close to the hearts of our Chief Inspector, Andrea Lewis, so you'll see here on screen, just giving you one scenario of an animal that we saved and their story. So hopefully the video will work.
We could hear dogs barking off to the side of the property, so that drew our attention. So we went over there and had a look, and the dogs were tethered on to a rope tied to bits of mesh, and yeah, it was not a great living conditions for them. We caught some movement at the back of the shed, and you could see sort of in the dark in the back of the shed that there was another dog there. Our hearts just absolutely sunk. It took a bit of time for us to untangle stuff from where she was tied up, and while we were doing that we actually noticed the little sort of indent at the back of where she was and found the little puppy there that was just this little tiny newborn puppy. Only one, we only found the one, so we don't know if there was any more. It was really upsetting to see that she had so many collars around her neck. Like she had about, from memory, I think there was about 4 big thick collars and chains and ropes, and like, you know, she tried to get away and they just kept tying her up with more ropes. Kelly was the main concern. You know, just from my experience, I didn't think they'd be able to fix something that bad. So yeah, it was sort of with a heavy heart we took her off to the vet, thinking that the outcome wasn't going to be great.
Well, as bad as it gets really, without being sort of incompatible with life, I guess. If she had more serious injuries to the internal organs, she probably wouldn't have survived. The round part is here, and it should be sitting in there. It's actually pushed out of the socket that it normally sits in. The pelvis had 3 fractures to it, and there's also some nerve damage to her dislocated leg as well. So she's giving birth to quite a large sized puppy. So the pain of that and discomfort is quite significant in the best of times, but to have to go through that with fractured pelvis and dislocated, the pain must have been excruciating.
I fell in love with her as soon as I saw her because she was so like my big boy. But it was just, I wanted her, and that was it. She was beautiful nature and a lovely dog. I got her 7 months after the operation. I don't know a terrific lot about the history, but I think it's very sad, and I think she's considering what she went through, the little I know of it. She's come through. She's still a very trusting dog, very affectionate. Wherever I move, I'm shadowed by 3.
So there's just one story of many, well, we've had to intervene in a scenario. Our skilled vet team have provided the veterinary support the animals required, and then our rehoming team has found a new forever home for an animal. So this is the story every day we have with lots of animals that come through our organisation. And the good news is that we have a 90% what we call live release rate. So the majority of animals that come to the RSPCA are rehomed, which is really exciting. The other part that is, you know, a part of the organisation that you might not always hear of or see is our criminal prosecution arm. We have in-house legal counsel and their role is to work with our inspectorate function to prosecute those that have been truly cruel to animals. And I thought I'd give you one quick case study. I'm running out of time, so I'll go through this relatively quickly. But earlier last year, we had Muttley, an animal that was reported to us as being whimpering in someone's backyard. Our inspectors entered that property, found the animal under the shed in a hole, and unfortunately, not only did the animal not have food, water, or adequate shelter, but it was determined later on had a almost football-sized ulcer, which turned out to be a cancerous ulcer on it as well, and had not received any veterinary support. Unfortunately, the outcome, the most humane outcome for that animal was euthanasia, and we then prosecuted that person, and the magistrate agreed that that person had been completely neglectful of that animal. They did receive a suspended sentence, but it would have been prison time. But most importantly, they were prohibited to ever own an animal again, which is absolutely the right outcome. But we face this every day, bringing prosecutions to court and finding some justice for the animals that have been truly neglected. Another part of the organisation that is really important is our advocacy. I'll just give you a couple of examples. More recently, in the last 12 months, we've been providing evidence in bow hunting and duck hunting inquiries. A lot of industry we work with very closely, but in some cases there are practices that are just truly cruel. And duck hunting is one example where the wounding of those ducks that don't get caught leads to quite a cruel death. The other big inquiry that you may have heard of was the inquiry into greyhound racing, with instances of live baiting and cruelty across the sector, and that report was released late last year by the commissioner that was in charge of that, and essentially the industry has been given a 2-year notice that they need to improve the welfare of animals in the sector or be shut down by the government. And one that you may remember from a few years ago, which was jumps racing. And so we advocated really heavily in the outcomes of jumps racing, the amount of deaths of horses on scene because of injury, and also obviously the injuries to the jockeys as well. And through that advocacy work and working with industry and government, that was banned in South Australia, and the only state now that still has jumps racing is Victoria. So a lot of work being done behind the scenes to advocate for improvements. Again, we always start off by being a partner, being an advisor and providing guidance on how to improve welfare of animals in all sectors. But in some cases we have to truly advocate to ban things as well. So that's a bit of an insight into some of the areas that you may not be aware of from the RSPCA. One last one I wanted to really share with you is our new site, which is an exciting new development at the corner of South Road and Majors Road, across from Glenthorne National Park. In fact, we are part of Glenthorne National Park, which is a new national park south of Adelaide. So this is our brand new state-of-the-art facility currently being finalised. We have about 3 months to go before we move in. What this facility will provide is state-of-the-art facilities for animals that we have on site, with the majority of animals in foster care, but those that need to be on site, that's me, in really great accommodation. But this new site also sees us move into wildlife. One of the things that we are missing in South Australia is a dedicated wildlife hospital, and we have invested in that centre building there. Will be a state-of-the-art animal hospital and wildlife hospital for wild animals here in South Australia. And this came about from the Kangaroo Island bushfires a couple of years ago, where we really realised that there was no facility available to assist in the veterinary support of wild animals. Our sister organisation in Queensland has been running a wildlife hospital for the last 6 years. They see 26,000 wild animals through that facility every year, and it was inspired us to go down the same path. So we can truly say now that we are, for all creatures great and small, being part of farming, domestic animals, and now more so in the wildlife space. So watch this space over the next so 12 months as we expand into our operations on our new site. You'll see a lot more activity from a wildlife perspective as well. This new facility also means that those animals that need to be in care with us, if they're under a prosecution hold, if they're a dangerous animal that needs to be held for a period of time, they can actually be housed in a place that is, comfortable for them as well. And obviously our volunteers play a big role in ensuring that the animals receive the best care that they can. I'll just flick through to my final couple of slides because I'm dead on 20 minutes. I guess it'd be remiss of me not to share with you some sponsorship opportunities that we have available. We are always looking for volunteers to support the organisation, particularly with this new facility. If any of you want to do some working bees or plant trees or whatever it might be, please let us know. We would love to have you volunteer for us and support us. But more broadly, we are building a new facility. We do have equipment that we're still fundraising for, and there's always a good fundraising opportunity. So we have sponsorship opportunities for wildlife vet packages, sponsoring of our new cat condos, and also our dog suites as well. So if you as an individual or as a club would like to have an opportunity to be part of this huge change for the organisation, there's plenty of opportunity to assist us with our fundraising as well. So thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure to share some insights to the organisation, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Any questions, Jeff?
Quickly dissecting this apricot, which was really nice. Thank you for that. That was really interesting. And just a reflection to start with, I mean, it must be really tough when you're having to deal with traditional activities, duck shooting, jumps racing, and greyhound racing, things that people take for granted, or, that's been part of the scene for 100 years. And you've got to say, no, it's really cruel. That's tough. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens with the greyhound stuff over whether we can actually self-regulate ourselves. Not sure that we're very good at that. But I noticed there was an image there of a cat towards the end, and I'm thinking cats, and I'm thinking wildlife.
Yep.
So have you got a position on, cats at night being indoors and that sort of thing? Are you involved in that debate?
Absolutely we are. Cats is a big issue, and one that is not easily resolved. In fact, we published a couple of years ago our state cat management plan as a way of educating state government and local government on solutions to resolving our cat problems that we have around the state. And inner city cat issues, you have semi-owned and unowned cats that are fed by lots of households. We just need to convert them into owned cats. We need to desex them, we need to microchip them, and then we need to have them owned by people. As you move more regionally, you have more and more cats, particularly in some regional centres where there are thousands of cats roaming the streets, killing wildlife, and that requires a multifaceted approach to bringing the population down. They say that 2 cats can turn into 1,000 cats over 5 years, so it really is a big problem. But from our perspective, we need to have local council particularly need to invest in the solution. They need to work with partner organisations, and we've got programs that we are ready to turn key to run to help reduce the cat population. But it's going to take everybody's involvement to get it under control. That's a big issue.
Thank you. Has there been any research to find out why there's animal cruelty? And if the answer is yes, how does RSPCA have educational programs to reduce animal cruelty?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, in essence, what we find is that we enter a home at the last resort. And what we find is that we're the last service to enter. So you've already had family services, you already have had the police, you've already had other departments, other community organisations in homes. And then they realise, they've got a cat or a dog, or they've got 20 cats in the back room, or whatever it might be, and suddenly we're entering a home. And so what we find is that you have families that are going through a cost of living crisis, and they just can't afford it to feed their animals versus their children potentially. So what we have is we have community outreach programs that we deploy into some of these targeted areas to partner with agencies and families to keep animals together with families. And what we find is if we can do that successfully, the whole family unit tend to stick together versus family breakdown. Now we can't solve all problems, but we tend to see mental health being a huge impact to cruelty in households. And sometimes it's not by choice, it's just by circumstance or a whole range of other things that occur in a household. But it's a big issue that we continue to invest in outreaching to those families and working with other partner organisations to support families.
One more, Adriano.
Thank you for your presentation. I just read a couple of days ago that in Italy, a town, Bolzano, in north of Italy, is making mandatory DNA logging of all their pets. And this is particularly to prevent problems with people having their dogs doing toilets in the middle of the streets, and then be able to trace back who the owner is. So is there any, I can see many other applications where it would be also very handy to be able to have that log control over the pets around the state. Is there any conversation of this kind that has been going on in Australia, in South Australia?
Not DNA testing of animals, no, but I think the gap that we have at the moment in South Australia particularly is that the Dog and Cat Management Act doesn't require councils to take responsibility for cats. So many years ago, dogs were running large and you'd have packs of dogs attacking people. Well, we got that under control. It took about 10 years, but all dogs are registered, they're all microchipped in many cases. And so you really don't have a huge problem with dogs. Yeah, you've got the odd, people that let their dog poo in your front yard or whatever it might be, right? But cats, the reason we've got the cat problem we have is because councils are not required by law to take responsibility for them. And so we're advocating for the Dog and Cat Management Act to be reviewed. It currently is, and we're hoping that will change and mandate councils to essentially have to look after cats in their area. Once that happens, you see a large flip in the requirement to take responsibility for cats. But it has to be consistent across the entire state, because some councils are on board, they've got their bylaws, but then it's inconsistent with their neighbouring council, and suddenly you've got cats roaming across council areas. So until we have legislation changed, we've got no chance. So we're really advocating heavily to have both the Animal Welfare Act changed, which is currently happening, and the Dog and Cat Management Act changed as well, and so that's happening as well. So we've got this year will be a big year for animal welfare in this state, and hopefully you'll see some big changes for the positive for cats, particularly, and other animals roaming at large. So yeah.
We've got one more sneaking in, Rob.
Thank you. During COVID, there was a big demand for dogs and cats, I presume, but dogs more so. And everyone was taking a dog, and the price of dogs went out of the roof.
Yep.
What has happened now? A lot of those people now want to get rid of the dogs or realise they've got a problem, and what's happening to those dogs?
Yeah, so great question. So we actually had an empty shelter for some periods during COVID. It was really fascinating. People just wanted that dog or that cat and a companion in the home. When I started in February last year, and at the end of March, early April, I was the first CEO in the history of the RSPCA to close our shelter because we had close to 1,400 animals in care. So to your point, we had a huge influx of animals into our Lonsdale shelter. We're now under control again, but we are seeing the cost of living pressures. We're seeing a lot of families surrender dogs and cats and other animals because they just can't afford to keep them anymore. So it's a sad state, but we continue to promote adopting animals rather than buying them. So if you'd like a dog or a cat, please see me after here. I've got a few in the back of my car. I'm just joking, but yeah, absolutely. We have seen a huge influx of animals inbound. Yeah, it's a huge problem. Thank you.
That's it, thank you. And Marcus, thank you very much for your presentation today. I think everybody in our community really appreciates the work that the RSPCA does, and all its volunteers and its members. All monies that we raise today go directly to our community and youth projects, and your presentation today has helped make this possible. And in appreciation, we'd like to present you copies of two of our publications for our centenary year, which you can put on your shelf and read at your leisure. So thank you. Would you please stand and thank Marcus?
Thank you very much.
That's for you. Thank you very much.